Hello again, it's me, back for another lore video on Rainworld Downpour. This time we're going to be looking at the echoes found around the game world. Normally they wouldn't be much more than just a creepy footnote in a lore summary, which is what they've been, but with the advent of Downpour we have a lot of new information and speculation about the nature of the space squids that I want to dive into because I didn't really get to talk about it much in my big lore summary. So, the way that this video is going to be structured is that at first I'm going to read out all the dialogue of the echoes in a very similar way to the Pearl video, speculating on what new things each monologue tells us, and then once I'm done with my book report, I'm going to theorize on just what all that dialogue tells us, and what an echo truly is. Also, spoilers, we're talking about events of this Bastards campaign, so keep that in mind if you haven't finished it. So before we start, I should probably explain just what an echo is in the game world. If you're completely new to Rainworld, you should probably watch my main lore summary before this video because you will be lost, and you will probably not know what's going on. But if you're still sticking around, the basics are that in Rainworld, nothing can truly die unless they ascend, which is a special kind of super death. There was a group of sapient humanoids known as the Ancients, which really wanted to attain this super death, but doing so while being too attached to the life you were leaving behind would leave you split in between ascending and, well, not ascending. The echoes are the end result of those events. Ancients whose souls are stuck just far enough away from the mortal coil to never be a part of it, nor apart from it. Echoes only seem to reveal themselves when their cycles overlap with other creatures, whatever that means, and are capable of giving enlightenment to those who meet them. When you meet them in-game, they give an edgy monologue and then gift you a max karma upgrade, one of many that you will need to ascend properly at the end of the game. So now that you know what echoes are, let's get into what they say before giving you that aforementioned karma upgrade. First off, good old 6 grains of gravel mountains abound, located atop the wall.
We can feel your presence, little creature. Your attunement has become much closer to ours. The mark you received is an unimaginable gift. The struggle, the cycles, it can all fade away, like a morning mist beneath the glory of the sun. We found a way.
What comes as most people's first echo is expectedly quite simple. They're basically just saying that the mark of communication is cool and that ascension exists. Despite this, who doesn't love 6 grains of gravel? Also, I'm not going to comment on it much going forwards, but God, the echo dialogue is so fucking cool. I want you all to know that I'm having a blast doing takes for this video. Next up, 19 Spades Endless Reflections, found atop chimney canopy.
Behold this empty husk of a land, populated only by storms, ruins, and abominations. It wasn't always thus. I was once the count of 2 living blocks, esteemed by my peers. I had progeny. From within my vessel of flesh I would perch upon this spot to observe the rising of the sun. Corporeal matters seem so distant now. Most of us have forgotten this place, but I remain. Perhaps I reminisce because I cannot go. Perhaps I cannot go because memory traps me here.
This here space squid tells us quite a lot about the nature of the echoes as a whole. The way the ancients saw their bodies as flesh vessels for their true selves, and how this new form is different from that and isn't made of flesh. This also confirms that echoes are still drawn to spots that they remember from their time as corporeal entities, such as this guy who rested atop chimney canopy to see the sunrise, who now haunts the grounds as an echo. Neat. Next up, 4 needles under plentiful leaves found in shaded citadel.
You have no name. I once had. I was embalmed, adorned, readied for the journey. So proud, there was jubilation. My name was sung loud and clear. Did they know that I didn't quite leave, didn't quite stay? Should I be ashamed that I linger here, where my memories are kept? Should I be ashamed that I now envy your flesh prison?
This is one of the examples of how echoes are created. from Dickheads. Four Needles was a classic rich kid, bathed in attention and given a great ceremony upon his ascension. Of course, though, his materialism would get the best of him, leaving him as an echo. This is also our first hint of the melancholy that the echoes feel, as he now envies the corporeality that he sought to escape at one point. Next up, droplets upon 5 large droplets found atop the Sky Islands.
Do you hear it, little one? The buzzing in the air. The endless chatter of 1,000 voices long dead. They are gone, and yet they speak, neither here nor there. Does that seem familiar? Yes, it is quite amusing for a being in my predicament.
Apparently, this echo can hear radio signals. Fucked up. This is quite cool, though, but tells us mostly nothing. If we stick to the interpretation that there's radio waves, which, I mean, it's an echo talking about invisible voices of those long dead in an abandoned radio communications array, I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory. But if we stray from that particular interpretation, it could be that the echoes are inextricably connected to all beings in the cycle, and those that were once in the cycle, and can hear their voices long after they've ascended. Next up, a bell 18 amber beads found in farm arrays.
Strange. Something still draws me here, even after all this time. The weather is so different now, but the fields... I do not need eyes to know that the grasses still sway gently in the winds. To have grasped at the boundless infinites of the cosmic void. Yet here I am, contemplating these same fields as I once did, talking to some sort of rodent.
This echo is my favorite from base game, just something about an entity which has seen it all, had the potential to move past reality and ascend beyond it, but was held back by the simple fond memories of a field. It exemplifies the relationship between the ideals of ascensionism and the fact that ancients are corporeal entities that seek happiness. But enough about how much this Space Squid's words tickle my brain. What lore does it tell us? Very little. I guess technically it tells us that the echoes have grasped at the boundless infinites of the cosmic void, and that they don't have eyes. You know, whatever that means. Also, rodent. Next up, 2 sprouts, 12 brackets, found at the mouth of the subterranean.
A little beast, but not as dim as the rest, perhaps. So down into the depths you go, as many others before you, drawn to the void again and again, and endless drip, drip, drip. Much like these tunnels and caves that amuse me so, the bones of forgotten civilizations heaped like so many sticks. Did they dig too deep? Or not deep enough? Fools. We were right to drill straight through them.
This echo tells us primarily about the nature of the depths in the subterranean, that Rainworld had several different civilizations before the main one that died off and made the iterators. It also tells us a little bit about how the ancients saw their efforts, but honestly it doesn't really tell us much more than that. Most of these base game echoes don't really tell us anything new. Anyways, those are all the main game echoes done. Now let's get into Rainworld Downpour, of which there's only one new non-saint echo added. He doesn't have a name, but he does have 2 monologues. Fancy. He's found atop the tallest tower in Five Pebbles City. I like to imagine that he's friends with Six Grain because they're neighbors.
You are stuck in a cycle of wrath and destruction, simple being. Gripped by raw emotions whose chains bind you, destined to this land. Shortcomings of the past haunt one and all like whispering phantoms. Listen. Let this be a warning to you. An unrewarding battle awaits, culminating in a path of no return. A perpetuity of struggles begetting more of the same. Find a way out, if you still can.
His dialogue changes if the artificer has killed the king scavenger and turns into this.
You who have encountered a consequence much like my own, gripped by raw emotions whose chains bind you, destined to this land. Shortcomings of the past haunt one and all like whispering phantoms. An unrewarding battle awaits, culminating in a path of no return. A perpetuity of struggles begetting more of the same. We are a pair who have forfeited everything.
This guy doesn't really have too much individual identity. He's basically just some extra exposition for how rough the Artificer's situation is. The Artificer is gripped with a desire to fuck up as many scavengers as humanly possible, and this echo is telling her to quit it, or she'll be unable to ascend, which... Yep, that checks out. It does also confirm with demonstrable proof that the ancients were right about how the echoes were created. I wonder what his dialogue would be with the other Slugats. Now finally we get to the meat of the video, the new Saint echoes. In Saint's campaign, the world has entered an ice age, and a lot of time has passed, but the echoes are still there, trapped all the same. Saint also gets some extra new echoes, faces new and old, seen again, wowee. Starting off, 6 grains again, wahoo! Now found in the ruins of Five Pebbles' leg after his structures collapse.
Our presence has been revealed to you now, young one. The attunement has become much nearer, like a ripple distorted upon a moonlit reflection. Repetitious, seemingly endless strife. An unimaginable curse. Swim with the tide, or against it.
6 grains dialogue now is mostly the same as before, following the same template, but it has a different connotation. Rather than celebrating your attunement, they speak as though you have already been doomed to the same fate as them, which, I mean, yeah, that checks out. 6 grains preaches the helplessness of Saint's situation, but fuck that, they call the Saint a young one. That's minorly lore important. Wow! Next up, 19 spades again, found in Chimney Canopy once more.
From my perch I've overlooked this land for an eternity, watched as this vast expanse was blanketed into an endless tundra. We remain trapped in place, and yet can never stop moving, funneled endlessly into an unknown future. To what destination do these memories reach?
He says the same thing again, more or less, essentially just telling us that the echoes are still here and still trapped, forced forwards into a future without even their memory, as snow blankets all they once knew. Pretty fucked up. Next up, droplets upon 5 large droplets, found in Sky Islands again.
Another presence attempts to commune with mine. Have I perceived your voice before? I have existed long enough to overhear them all. Those who have been, and those who have yet to be. Each serving as a wave propagating through the annals of history. Listened as I have for many eons, 'tis true some of those smells cannot help but mirror back.
This here seems to hint that our second theory might have been correct, and that it wasn't just radio signals he was referring to initially, or maybe it was, but rather the voices and consciousness of all entities struggling within the cycle are what he's referring to now. This echo references how long he has been listening to those voices, and how perhaps the Saint was heard before. Another weird little nugget of info about Saint to throw onto the pile. Next up, a bell, 18 ember beads, found in Farmarays once more.
Why is it? This long-forgotten place beckons me, drawn by a certain presence. The fields here are not as I remember. Too much has changed. But by forfeiting familiarities, perhaps something new is gained. Despite all, this site has still not revealed the entirety of its secrets. Perhaps that is the reason for my continued imprisonment.
It seems Funny Man is still locked staring at the fields, and his dialogue seems to be mostly coping about that fact. He references that despite the fact that the fields barely fit his memory anymore, he still finds himself drawn towards them. Not too much here, but glad to see that my man is still looking at his grass. Next up, 2 sprouts, 12 brackets, found in Subterranean again.
A little beast, come to join me in this great undoing. The old world will soon vanish, wiped from history, to pave a path for the dawning of a new era. How many have been consumed so far? Were we the 10th civilization? Or the 1000th? Amusingly, they thought their small struggles bore such great significance. All was not but to serve the void.
This echo's view has changed as well. Whereas previously it was speaking about the inferiority of the past civilizations, it now recognizes that its civilization has joined the ranks of those shitty past ones. Just another one to fall to the same great undoing that took the last one. It speaks on how the whims and wills of the ancients and iterators were not but to serve the void, whatever that means. It could mean that the void is a conscious entity that seeks emotions, but it's more likely that the final line of this echo's monologue is simply referencing how it views all the trifles as worthless, to serve nothing, nothing being the void. Or It's just that they didn't matter. Now we get to the unnamed Saint Echoes, of which there are 3. First off, found in the remains of drainage system, now labeled undergrowth.
Do you see the same as me? Beauty continuing to bloom, even in a place long forgotten. I did not have the will to depart, nor the desire. Why did they always search for an escape, as if we were imprisoned? What offering from the void could usurp the gift of life already given? This moment, right here. It is where we are meant to be.
This is my favorite Echo in the entire game, and not just because he plays past Echoes, but that is a major factor. This Echo doesn't tell us much, but it does prove that several ancients rejected the Ascensionist philosophy held by most of ancient society. That, or this particular Echo, realized now, or perhaps just before his ascension, that the desire to escape was a misplaced one. This Echo confirms so many of the themes that I've been writing about and constantly saying. He's my favorite. He's also in an S tier area too, so that helps. Region tier list coming eventually. Next up, a top moon superstructure in Shoreline.
You stand upon our creation. I toiled away until my final breath, as did many of us, through countless generations. Research, shipments, architecture, computation, politics, worship, revolutions, all for a heap of rusted metal steeped in a puddle of frozen water. I placed my faith into the hands of random gods. Now I must endure it to the end.
God, video code really cooked with these new Echoes that go so hard. This one tells us specifically about the opinions towards the Iterator project, how many of the ancients worked until their ascension, building the Iterators. Their final goal was created many times, but now lies as nothing more than wreckage. It's a similar mindset to 12 Bracket's second monologue. As the Echoes watch their world freeze and die, they are faced with the truth that all they cared for was just a blip in the life cycle of their world. Finally, a significantly less serious Echo atop the bitter area.
Such drive, such tenacity, all to come to such a lonely, forsaken place. Was it all defined to me, young one? Or did the idea of such a journey itself spark the fire within you? Such enthusiasm should be rewarded. What an amazing little beast you are.
Oh, that's nice. Video Cult is congratulating you for going that far to get to Bitter Aryan Saint. This tells us not all too much if you couldn't tell, besides the fact that the Echo is aware of how out of the way he is. Anyway, onto the theory section. So, with this new knowledge, let's define an Echo one more time. An Echo is an ancient who has failed to fully ascend, and gotten stuck. Their cycle stuck in place. They are like ghosts, only visible sometimes when their cycle overlaps with another's. While this is the case, upon meeting the Echo, the cycle just restarts, which implies that it's a dream, but that only occurs when you meet the Echo. I don't know, it's weird. They have the power to lead others to ascension by improving their karma. And they seem to be fully conscious and cognizant of their situation, past and surroundings. Fully functional consciousnesses, trapped in place for all eternity, capable of changing their opinions and growing mentally, despite their circumstances. Now before we continue, let me reiterate the spoiler warning for specifically the ending of the Saint campaign. So at the end of the Saints campaign, we learn that the Saint is/was an Echo. It suggested that Saint's cycle is one that is incapable of ending, similar to the Echoes. Due to its connection to the Void and Ascension as a whole, it cannot ascend itself. The end screen of the Saint campaign shows Saint as an Echo. The end cutscene shows Saint grow Echo tendrils, shed Echo scales, and then have its Echo aura dispelled by some odd Slugcat dream. So it's my guess that Saint is not a full Echo. Rather, as stated in my lore video, which is not fully correct, Challenge 70 is not canon, wish I knew that beforehand. But anyways, let me create a new Saint theory to mix with this, because it feels important. Saint is not the triple affirmative by design. Rather, they are a Slugcat that has at some point ascended, but failed in a much stranger way. The desire that kept them behind wasn't any karmic desire. It was the 10th one. So I guess it was a karmic desire. The desire to ascend to others or itself. Assuming that's what Karma 10 represents, which, like, what else would it represent? The Saint was returned to the physical plane, but its desire kept it from being stuck in place. The others were stopped due to their ego, their ties to the material world, or whatever the hell Six Grains was on about. Saint was allowed to continue, but at the cost of having no other options besides continuing. The Saint is not a traditional Echo. It is a physical entity incapable of ascending, but still keeps its flesh prison. At least that's the only theory that makes sense now that Sliver's out the window. Well, I mean, there's probably more, but I can't think of any right now. But what's up with that Slugcat dream? That thing that appears and dispels the Saint's aura? Well, my guess is that this dream represents the dream that starts the Saint campaign, the one where it's in the Void Sea and looking at the 10th karma. Now, the main thing to notice is that the dream that starts the Saints campaign doesn't look like the end of Ascension cutscene. It's in the dream art style, which means that it was in fact a dream. But my guess is that this was still a flashback, as almost every single dream is a flashback or a flash forwards. They all seem to represent things that have happened or will happen, but the only ones that represent things that will happen are the ones that are, like, the void dreams, which I guess this is technically a void dream, so it could be referring to the Saint going down and ascending Erej, or it could be representing the Saint's initial failed ascension. So, honestly, I don't know. It's kind of weird, but the dream does bring it back from that echo state. And then we're back at the start of the campaign again. So it's my guess that the representation of the little glowy slug cat, which almost always represents a shelter that you will dream in, specifically represents the Saints campaign starting over, the cycle beginning. I presume. Honestly, I mostly just pulled that out of my ass, but there's nothing that really counters it, so whatever theory works. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you all for watching. The next video should be a region concept, so get excited for that. But then I have no excuse but to make Flora Fauna or the region tier list. Alright. Oh boy. Anyways, see you all next time, and goodbye.